This is Amy Chan from CakeDecoratingSchool.com, and if you like cake decorating, you're in the right place. Welcome to our flower series. In this video, we'll be piping Buttercream Peach Blossoms. It's broken down into steps so you can skip ahead, rewind, and rewatch as desired. We are going to make two colors for our peach blossoms today, and we're using American Style Buttercream and the following liquid gel colors: Neon Bright Pink, Sunset Orange, and finally, a little bit of Buckeye Brown. To start with, we're making a nice light peach color. So I've got a little bit of my pink and orange out here on my lid, and I'm just going to use a few specks of each. And I'm going to go heavier on my pink than my orange. Orange is usually typically pretty strong and can be a little overpowering, so I don't want to give it too much of that. Just one to a couple of specks of pink. We want to make a nice light, kind of like peachy pink color. Very much like a creamsicle kind of shade. And you can see it definitely gives you that orange really quickly. So I'm just going to take and give it just a little more of that pink. There we go. And it's feeling like a nice little dreamsicle right now, and that's going to be the perfect shade. Now we're going to make some color for our stamens, and I want to do a really light kind of tan color. The stamens in these are often kind of like a whitish color, maybe with a little hint of pink or something. I'm just going to give it a tiny little speck of that Buckeye Brown and just a tiny little speck of that pink. And I just want to go with just a little bit of color in it just to make sure that it reads and it doesn't look like a pure white tone, because sometimes that makes them look a little bit kind of like fake and less natural. So just giving it a little hint of color. And start with really tiny specks. That way it's easier to add more if I want to. And I think I just want to go a little bit more on this. So I'm just basically looking for a light kind of cream tan color. So just something that's kind of barely there, but doesn't feel too stark white in the middle. It'll have a little bit more of a natural feel to it. If it looks like it's got just a little bit of color in it, and I think that's going to be fantastic. For this flower, we're going to use two bags. We're using both 12-inch disposable bags. You can use reusable ones or whatever you like. We have them fitted directly with the tips since we won't be changing them. For a peach, we're using a 104. For a cream, we're using a number 1. Let's review the techniques that we're going to use to create our peach blossoms. I've got my bag with my 104, and we're going to use it to create our petals. And we're doing some kind of narrow or small hearts with these. So a lot smaller than we would normally do with this tip. So just nice tiny motions, but same general action. The back of the bag is going to be facing towards 130. We're going to be holding it at 45 degrees. And we're just going to hold it so that the fat end is towards the center, the skinny end is out, and you can see that puts it on a nice little angle there. And we're just going to have the end of the tip rocked up a tiny bit. And we're going to draw a little heart shape. So not too big, just out a tiny bit, dip in, back out, and back to the center. And we're also going to make some little skinny petals, and these are kind of skinny upright petals. We're going to be using the same bag, 104 tip. Bag is at 45 degrees, and it's going to be either 4:30 or 6 o'clock, depending on how you want to hold it, but it'll create pretty much the same effect. And we're going to have the fat end anchored and touching the bottom, and the skinny end is basically going to be pointing straight up. And we're just going to kind of push away from ourselves a little bit and pull back. And you can see it's going to make these kind of little skinny wedge-like petals, Think of them like little shark's fins almost, but we're going to be doing these in the center of a flower, so it's going to be resting on top of other petals. So it's going to give it a little bit of height and drama and flair there in the center, and just something that's a tiny bit different. They're going to look like little narrow petals that are kind of towards the center of the flower that maybe haven't unfurled yet to their full width. Finally, stamens. These are going to be easy little spikes. We're going to make them with our #1 tip, and the idea is to make them nice and kind of long and frilly. So I'll probably start in the center and make some nice long ones. So just squeeze till you get a dot, and then squeeze while you're pulling up. You want to just pull away at the end so you get a nice little tapered tip. And as we go around the outside, we can pull them up and around and over the center. And what'll happen is we'll have some petals really close in there, and they'll end up supporting them. So they should be kind of nice, long, and frilly. Now that we've gone over the techniques let's review how we put them together to actually build a blossom. We're going to start out with our bag with our 104, and we're going to pipe 5 of those small hearts, and we're going to leave a gap not only in the middle, but between each petal. So we want a little space between the petals. This is going to allow us to give it some depth and variety. Once we've done that, we're going to rock the end of our tip up a little bit. That's really the only thing we're changing about how we hold our bag. And we're going to move a little closer to the center, and we're going to pipe 3 more of those petals slightly to the right of each of our first ones. And so we're just going to skip and kind of go every other, and 2 of them will be right next to each other at the end because we started with 5 and now we're doing 3. So this is going to make those petals slightly offset, so they're going to kind of have a little jaunty angle to them. They'll fill in a little of the space between our original row of petals, and they'll be a little closer to the center. Then we're going to do a 3rd row. We'll do 5 in this, and they're going to be almost directly on top of our original 5, except some of them will angle a little to the other direction because of those little 3 petals we squeaked there in the middle. And we're going to rock the end of the tip up a little more for these as well. This is going to give our flower a feeling like those petals are kind of unfurling and opening up. We're going to go closer to the center, maybe a smidge off to the left because we did the 2nd row a little off to the right. And we'll fill up a lot of the gap between the petals and in the middle by doing this. So we'll pipe 1 kind of directly layered on top of those original rows. So 5 in that as well. Then we're really going to make some changes to how we hold the bag. We're going to do what we did for those little narrow petals when we practiced. So we're going to move that back into the bag so it's really facing towards our chest. And where we kind of skipped is a great place to go in and do these narrow petals. So think everywhere you didn't do a petal for that 2nd row is a great place to put in a narrow one. It'll help connect everything together. It'll put in these little narrow petals that look like they haven't unfurled yet, and it'll help to fill up the center of our flower a tiny bit. And you can pipe 3 to 4 of those, just whatever you feel your individual blossom needs. It's also a great way to give these blossoms a little bit of variety by mixing up the number there. Then we'll switch over to our bag with our #1, and we'll do our stamens. I like to fill in the middle first and then work around the outside edge. And I just kind of want to go up the side of the petals and flick to the center a little bit with those stamens where I'm working around the outside edge. That'll give us a nice feeling like we've got a lot of little frilly stamens and they're kind of curling towards the center. And it'll give these blossoms a nice, soft, romantic feel. We're going to practice on our nail now, and I have a 2-inch nail. I've got it fitted with my 5-segment template, and I've got my bag with my 104 ready, and we've got a little piece of parchment paper fixed there on top, so it'll be easy to take our flowers off of our nail. We're going to start just by moving towards the outside edge. So you can think the fat end is not going to be right towards the center. We don't want to draw long, big petals. We want to keep them short. And you'll notice it'll be in the middle of this space, but it's not going to take up the whole space. So we're going to pipe those nice little heart petals. And I'm going to try not to move my parchment paper around too much on myself. They don't all have to be perfectly the same size. Just kind of try to keep them sort of in the middle. If there's a gap in the center, you're doing perfect. And they can have a little variety in the exact size and shape. So some are a little fatter, some are a little narrower, and that's going to give us some nice variety. For our second row, we're going to do 3, and the only thing I'm going to change about how I'm holding the bag is I'm just going to rotate the opening of the tip up a little bit. So just that fat end, instead of being almost flat against the surface, it's just going to come up a little bit for me. And that's going to allow me to pipe on top of these petals without digging into them. And it's also going to help make our flower look like it opens up a bit. So we're just going to do 3 of our little hearts now, off to the side. So do 1 there, skip, and then we can't really skip again, so we'll have to do 2 kind of next to each other, which is just fine. But you see that starts to fill in the middle, and it also starts to fill in the space between some of our petals. For our third row, we're going to do what we did before, which is rotate the opening up just a little more. We're not straight up and down. We're still at an angle, probably between 45 and 60 degrees. And we're going to pull a little bit on the left side. You can make these a little bit bigger too if you need to fill up some area. And we're basically going to do 5 again, kind of on top of our original ones. And since we have the ones that are offset to the right, you can see that now fills up that area. Things are starting to get connected together. And some of them are going to be off to more of an angle because you have that second row in there, and some of them will not. But you can see it really starts to take up that space, connect all of our petals, and it'll make a nice little solid flower. And just take your time and work them in there. And it kind of gives it a nice layered effect that's not exactly the same all over. Now we're going to do some of those little narrow petals. So I'm just going to pick the spots where I don't have one of those petals for my second row. And I've got the back end of my bag kind of towards my shoulder, and I'm just going to slide at a little bit of an angle that mimics that. So I'm just going to line up the space where I want to go in with that. If you're going to go straight towards yourself, go like this. My problem is though, I hit the mic when I do it at that angle. So the idea is just you want to line yourself up so you're pushing that petal in a straight little line. So the actual angle of the back of the bag doesn't matter as much as it's comfortable and you can get it lined up in there. So I'm just going to pull 3 of these. I'm going to make sure to go in those little gaps where I didn't have a petal, and then I just put in a third one to kind of balance it out. And you can see from the side, that gives us a beautifully ruffled flower. It's nice, it's delicate. The petals look a little bit chaotic, even though we're following a pretty little systematic method here. Our final step is to add our stamens. So I've got my bag with my number 1 and my cream colored frosting in there, and I'm just gonna start here at the center. Each one, pipe a dot, and then pull up. So start in the center, go all the way around, nice, long and frilly. And as you work around, I'm going to pull out to the side and then flick over the center. And this should give us kind of a nice, wild, loose look. And you can see that little bit of cream, that little bit of brown and pink that we added to this frosting gives it a nice natural tone that's not so stark in contrast to that light, beautiful peachy pink that we made. And that fills up that center and gives us a lovely little delicate look to these beautiful flowers. That's all for this lesson on peach blossoms. If you enjoyed it, we hope you check out some of the other videos in our flower series, like maybe our tutorial on daisies. It's a simple one if you're new to piping buttercream flowers. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like more about the cake decorating materials and equipment we use, or just some inspirational videos about cake decorating itself, you can follow us on Insta or YouTube at Cake Decorating School. If you'd like to know more about yearly membership and what it entails, you can go to www.cakedecoratingschool.com for more information. And if you're interested in these products, you can check the links in the description.